Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel. I made a video a few days ago, one of my the problems with Dave Filoni video, and one of the points that I made in the video was that one of the ways that Filoni has tried to remake Star Wars, and one way he's kind of reforming it into what he wants it to be, is this idea that he started pushing with the Clone Wars, that the Jedi were corrupt. Man, they needed to go. They needed to be replaced because they were just really corrupt. You know, it was inevitable that they would have fallen. You know, so they needed to be out there. And Ahsoka managed to escape that corruption, you know, which makes perfect sense now, because then she can be there to teach and train Luke, so to make sure that he doesn't fall into the corruption like his father, you know, was tainted with. And because, you know, Obi-Wan was of the old guard, you know, and we saw how useless he is in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series anyway. This is this garbage way that he's trying to remake the Star Wars universe. That is not in line with George Lucas's vision of Star Wars. The Jedi, the light side, they're the good guys. They are the good guys. Now, I had people, I made that, express that point in the video, and not everybody, but some people would just hit me with like, you're an idiot. That's clearly not the case. They were clearly corrupt. Did you watch the prequels? Did you? And I'm looking there thinking, where in the world are you getting that they were corrupt from? Where in the world? If you admit, if you say, okay, for the sake of argument, we're going to remove the Clone Wars from the scene, from this discussion, because I'm saying that's when Filoni brought it in, where do you possibly see corruption in the Jedi? And I'm thinking, okay, at best, maybe this is a vocabulary issue. Maybe there's a miscommunication in the terms here. Maybe they're thinking, yeah, of course it's corrupt. I mean, you can say that the Jedi, they were certainly blinded by Palpatine. You can say that they were, in effect, they were rendered ineffective to combat the darkness that was growing up in their midst, you know, with Palpatine there and all the machinations, especially if you read Darth Plagueis and you realize all the stuff that's going on. And you read the machinations and whatnot of Dooku acting under the power of Plagueis and Sifo-Dyas and all this kinds of stuff. So you could maybe say, okay, well, yeah, there are individuals in the Jedi Order who are either fallen to the dark side or being sort of hapless and manipulated by it without knowing. Well, those are individual Jedi. That's not the Jedi are corrupt. This isn't the Order of Jedi, that the Jedi Council is corrupt. No, they're made blind. You can maybe say that some of them were a little overconfident, maybe not being quite on his guard as they should have or whatever. But to say they're corrupt, that implies that there's a degradation or a change in their values, in their what they hold to be worth protecting and worth combating in the world. That's like when you say a politician is corrupt. Well, the politician is no longer acting in the interest of his people; they're acting in self-interest. You can't say the Jedi were corrupt. Where in the world do you get that from? And so I think maybe at best it was just sort of a miscommunication of terms. Maybe they're corrupt in their mind. Doesn't mean really what it means, and they're trying to think, well, yeah, the Jedi were blinded, you know, and kind of made to, you know, allow this thing to happen in their midst. They're on their guard, sure, but that's not corrupt. I think though, most likely for a lot of people that react so viscerally to the idea that, of course the Jedi were corrupt, is because a lot of them are millennials. And hear me out, I'm being specific. I'm not just going, oh, millennials, they're like blah, blah, blah. No, but there's a generation of people that grew up with the prequels as their Star Wars. In fact, sometimes it's the only Star Wars they ever knew until the Clone Wars came in or whatever. A lot of people just watched those prequels and only then went on to see the original trilogy, or never bothered to see the original trilogy. And one of the reasons that the prequels get a lot of hate sometimes, even from the beginning, is because people were trying to judge those movies as standalone movies, as a standalone trilogy. And you're supposed to look at the prequels as prequels to the original trilogy. In other words, you see in the prequels, beat by beat, the similarities that Lucas is showing between Anakin's path and his childhood and Luke's path and his childhood. And you see the similarities. Certain scenes are made to look similar, but ultimately you see the ways the two diverge from each other. You see the way Anakin ultimately did fall to the dark side. He gave in. This was his own fault, his own bad choices that brought him about. This is not the fault of the Jedi. The Jedi failed him. Nothing about Obi-Wan going around, oh, I failed Anakin. Oh, I'm such a sad old man. No, that's ridiculous. Luke made the right choices. Now, it is true. It is true that, and the EU shows this brilliantly, that, Obi-Wan tells Luke in his form of a Force ghost in the EU, he says, you've got to decide what the new Jedi Order is going to be. It can't be the old Jedi Order, because that was for the Old Republic, and the Old Republic has faded away. This is a new time. This is a new Republic. You need to decide what the Jedi Order is going to be. And it's certainly true that Luke made changes. In the EU, he certainly made changes. Of course, he doesn't have the no, the celibate rule or whatever, no love or no marriage or whatever. But in the EU, you realize that wasn't something that was always with the Jedi anyway. That was something that was applied later, and he took it away, and it was for the good. So yeah, he made some changes, but that doesn't mean the Jedi were corrupt. So I think, going back to the idea of millennials, that this was the Star Wars that they knew. And I'm not saying every millennial's like this, of course not. I know many wonderful, very responsible, upright millennials. And this isn't exclusive to millennials and their generation, but it's something that we see very much widespread in this generation, which is that hesitance to take any responsibility for your own actions. The idea that it's always somebody else's fault. You were handed a pretty crummy deal to begin with, and that's why you're failing. I think that kind of mentality latches on to a character like Anakin, and then watches him in that prequel trilogy eventually fall to the dark side. And I think, yeah, it's this need to find sympathy in the villains, because it's that what I've been talking about, that I don't love an aspirational hero. Oh, that's unrealistic. I've decided that's unrealistic because I don't want to have to strive for that. Villains, well, there's some sympathy to the villains because, they're just misunderstood, really. And, I mean, look at the good guys. The good guys aren't all that great either, people. Just that desire to pull them down and to try to treat the archetypal mythology as though it's reality. And that's not how that works. Ultimately, what that does, if the Jedi were corrupt, then that ultimately puts a little bit of sympathy on Palpatine. Well, he had obviously he had wrong motives, and he went way too far and stuff like that. But I mean, hey, he was fighting against corruption that he probably really believed was there, so, we're going to get a Palpatine movie like we got a Joker movie now, talking about, he's had a bum deal. This is nonsense. And I think a lot of it does come from that. Again, not everybody who might be having the discussion with me or the debate, necessarily comes from that background, but I think that's a lot of it. And Filoni is playing right into these people's tastes, And he's doing it in a way that puts his little princess front and center as the one who resisted the corruption. And she's Gandalf now, and she goes and finds the people and makes sure that Luke is being a good little hobbit and learning the right way and blah, blah, blah. And she dealt with Thrawn, and she dealt with this. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. There's no reasoning. I've read most of the prequel tie-in books from the EU. There's no reasoning that says they were a corrupt institution. Again, individual Jedi, sure. Either fall into the dark side or being used by it. You can say they were perhaps a little too complacent or overconfident. They were certainly blinded, but they were not corrupt. These words mean very specific things. If you're going to insist upon this or that word, you got to back it up. Somebody said, well, yeah, but look, Mace Windu, look at him trying to kill Palpatine. Of course they were corrupt. How does that track? First of all, Mace Windu deciding to kill Palpatine in that moment, it's debatable whether or not he should have done that or not. And I do mean that debatable. You could go on either side of it. I mean, he just learned the Chancellor. You can't really just turn the Chancellor over to the Senate because he found out the extent of the Chancellor's Sith power, that he would just get the Senate to turn around and turn on the Jedi. If he's really doing this, it's not out of revenge he was trying to kill Palpatine. This is the only way to purge the darkness, to save the Republic, to save the people. But let's just say that for argument's sake, okay, Mace Windu was corrupted when he was trying to kill Palpatine in that last scene of one of the last scenes of Revenge of the Sith. That still doesn't necessarily mean that the Jedi were corrupt. Okay, even if he was corrupt in that moment, doesn't mean he was corrupt beforehand. You got to show me evidence of that. You got to show me how was the council corrupt? How was this and that? And Filoni's trying to fill in those gaps. Oh, yeah, they were corrupt. You see what they did to Ahsoka? Oh, yeah, did you see this? He's playing into that. And that's why we got that garbage Kenobi arc, in the recent series. Because, as I said before they even aired it, I said Kenobi's going to be doing his penance. Oh, I was part of the evil patriarchy of the Jedi. And, all that kind of nonsense. And he's useless. He was useless to save Luke. Ineffective. That's the Jedi that Filoni wants you to see. And if he ever gets to the point where he's telling stories of Luke's Jedi Order, I guarantee you anything good from it will be coming from Ahsoka. This is playing into Kathleen Kennedy's agenda 100%. So yeah, that just I wanted to make a whole video addressing that, because it's just absurd notion that the Jedi were corrupt. Where do you get that? That's something Filoni's trying to insinuate ever more skillfully and assertively, but that wasn't in the movies or the books. It just wasn't. So anyway, that's all I've got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back for more. Of course, don't forget Tuesday nights our our Star Wars EU book study, in which right now we are going through Shatterpoint, wonderful Mace Windu book from the Clone Wars era. So you can join us on Tuesday nights for that. We've gone through a bunch of EU books already. We'll be going through more, and I've got links and everything in the description below to grab your copy, or our copies of previous books or whatever that you want to grab and join in with us. So that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the hero stories you love.